Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all today on behalf of Food, Health and Consumer Products of Canada. I'm Wendy Baker, Director of Member Services and Events. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're fortunate to hear insights on sustainability and a zero-waste world where pooled assets and sustainability solutions help supply chains become more efficient. Our guests today will share how they formed a successful partnership focused on waste prevention as they share their circular business models, and the benefits this realizes for the business and other stakeholders. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items. All lines are muted to minimize any background noise. Our speakers are happy to take your questions at the end of their presentation. Throughout the session, if you think of a question you'd like to pose, please submit it by using the webinar's Q&A tool, which you will find by clicking on the orange arrow at the top right of your screen. Please note today's session is being recorded and will be available to participants on FHCP's member site, along with a copy of the presentation. As is our practice, a post-event feedback survey will be sent to you later today and will include the link to the recording as well as to the presentation itself. We ask that you please take the opportunity to answer these few questions and share your thoughts and suggestions on future topics of interest. This afternoon, we're very pleased to hear from CHEP, a Brambles company, who is a corporate member in FCPC's associate program, along with their guest client from Ice River Springs. Brambles and Chep help move more goods to more people in more places than any other organization on earth. Their pallets, crates, and containers form the invisible backbone of the global supply chain. As pioneers of the sharing economy, CHEP created one of the world's most sustainable logistics businesses through the share and reuse of their products. Their work has always eliminated waste throughout the supply chain, and by collaborating with customers, they can do even more to solve shared challenges, from taking out transport miles to fighting food waste. Sharing his expertise with us today is Jonathan North. Jonathan rejoined CHEP in 2019 as the Senior Manager and Program Lead for the Zero Waste World Program in North America. In this position, Jonathan leverages his supply chain and sustainability expertise to further the Zero Waste World initiative. His new leadership role brings Jonathan back full circle. He worked at CHEP from 1991 to 2003, supporting and leading a number of key initiatives, including the development, production, and introduction of the block pallet still used today. He also defined, developed, and launched the CHEP Innovation Center, supported the technical development of first-generation RPCs and other returnable crates and containers, helped launch CHEP in Mexico and Chile, and managed on-site pallet operations for Walmart, Sam's Club, and Home Depot. Joining Jonathan is Crystal Howe, sustainability manager at Ice River family of companies. With a background in organic farming and a passion for business with a purpose, Crystal drives sustainability best practices within the organization, the community, and with its supplier and customer partners. She has championed many initiatives in the areas of zero waste to landfill, energy reduction, and manufacturing efficiency to minimize the environmental impact and maximize the effectiveness of the business. Jonathan and Crystal, thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights and expertise with our members today. We're looking forward to a very insightful hour ahead. So let's begin our discussion. Jonathan, over to you.
Thanks, Wendy. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon. And what we'd like to do over the next hour or so, or hour actually, is run through these few points and leave some time at the end for questions. Firstly, I'll start by introducing a little bit more about CHEP and building on that fantastic introduction, Wendy. You said a lot, and I really appreciate those opening remarks. I'd also then like to dig in a little bit around this Zero Waste World collaborative program that we launched a year or so ago. And then Crystal will take over and share some thoughts and insights and background behind Ice River Springs before we then reconvene and share a little bit of the insights that we have come to realize through our collaboration, both how we've collaborated in the past together and within our own supply chains, and how we'd like to explore further opportunities to work together in the future. And out of that, what learnings we've collectively realized that we'd like to share, finally leaving some time at the end for some questions. So I'm going to dive straight in and build on, again, Wendy, that very kind introduction that you gave. CHEP is a Brambles company. We've been in business in Canada for 40 years, and we just celebrated our 30th anniversary in the US. And as you rightly said, we claim to be the invisible backbone of the supply chain. And that we validate by saying we have about 330 now million bits of equipment, pallets, crates, and containers, operating in 59 countries around the world. A good portion of that footprint is in North America, where we have more than 110 million assets. And those are continually shared and reused across at least 46 of the 50 largest CPG companies, but obviously many more customers beyond that. And what we offer through these reusable programs and reusable products is solutions from the very first mile, so from the receipt of raw material into primary manufacturing locations, all the way down to last mile solutions that work particularly well with retail. And we do that across about 14,000 manufacturing points in the US and about 19,000 in distribution and retailing points across the US. And the common denominator across business here, as well as all of these other 58 countries, including Canada, is that those assets are continually shared and reused in a circular way, realizing tremendous substantial environmental benefits for our customers and our supply chain partners. And what that looks like then is, as I mentioned, the sharing and the reusing means that we are sort of the central hub between our customers. So whether the customer is a raw material manufacturer or primary goods manufacturer, or even a grower for that matter, you can see in this illustration on the left-hand side how these assets continually turn around within those loops. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit later on. Versus on the right-hand side, you see a much more traditional linear model, where materials are taken, produced, and then shipped through, and ultimately and often disposed at the end of life. So the big differentiator here is that our products are continually in circulation. In North America, we pull a number of different wooden pallets. I'm pleased to say, as we now next week start to share some of our most recent sustainability achievements, I can give us a sneak preview and confirm that now we've achieved 100% certified lumber in all of our products in all 59 countries. So we don't buy any lumber that hasn't come from certified sources. We also have quite a substantial pool of non-wooden based products. In particular, in North America, we have these three main large bulk containers that are primarily used for the shipment of raw material into manufacturing locations. The future sustainability direction for Brambles will see us moving from a position where we've, for the last 5 years or so, focused on being better. But moving forward, our focus is now to creating more positive impact and putting back more to our supply chains than we take out. And in doing so, helping to build globally regenerative supply chains. Our new sustainability direction is split into 3 areas where we focus on being positive for the planet, positive for business, and positive for communities. And just maybe 2 things to draw out in advance of this going live next week is particularly planet positive ambition. One thing is that we are going to, for every tree we harvest, we will plant 2 in its place. 1 to replace the tree that was used for our lumber, for our pallets, whether it's for a new pallet or repaired pallet. And then 1 for the planet, which is one where we will intentionally now go out and support programs to restore positive forestation and biodiversity in areas where that's needed. And then secondly, as we begin to diversify a little bit more into plastic-based products, we have a 2-step plan to make sure that we will start to work on incorporating more and more recycled material into those products, with an ambition to get to 100% recycled and upcycled plastic in all of our future plastic products from 2030. So more of those details will start to be shared next week. So if that's a little bit about CHEP, what I'd now like to share is a few slides around Zero Waste World, a collaborative sustainability initiative that we launched last year, which we've been now working quite closely with Ice River Springs on. And the whole context and background to this program was to ask a question about how CHEP could become a more collaborative and a better business partner, leveraging the fact that we work with so many large manufacturers and so many large retailers, and that we have insight into the supply chains that connect all of those points. We felt we had an opportunity to be more than just a container or pallet provider. On top of which we understand and we know now that supply chains are getting more and more complicated, with more being the buzzword. Customers demanding more frequent deliveries to more locations, wanting it done faster, loving the convenience of that, so shopping more and more in those ways. And now for the first time, beginning to ask questions that, can I have all of that convenience? Can I have all of that product selection? But can I have it with a reduced environmental or social impact? And those expectations today, I think, sit primarily on the brand's shoulders, but recognizing that, the brands have tremendous support from multiple supply chain partners to get those products to the shelf. There's an opportunity for companies such as ourselves to support both manufacturers and retailers. So the summary of this is that this seems to be a tremendous opportunity to collaborate. So in order to build this program, we spoke to our customers. We developed it from a very much a customer-centric point of view. We spoke to customers on both ends of the supply chain, from the manufacturing side down to retail. We canvassed customers in Europe and North America. We spoke to 75 of our largest customers, and we asked them what their pain points were. We simply said, where is your business challenge today, and where do you anticipate those challenges either continuing or maybe even getting worse into the future? And whether we spoke to, irrespective of whether we spoke to customers on either end of the supply chain, we found more similarities than differences. And when we aggregated all of those insights together, they naturally fell into three buckets. First and foremost, around desires and ambitions to reduce waste, physical waste. Secondly, around reducing energy footprint. And then thirdly, just concerns about general levels of inefficiency in the supply chain and how we could engineer those out. And I think if anything, in the last 6 months, we've understand to some extent just how fragile some of the supply chains are when stretched just a little bit further than traditional, than normal. So here we are with Zero Waste World. It's very much a collaborative program. It's an opportunity for us to come to the table with our customers, bringing the things that we do, our competencies, our skills, our knowledge and experience, sitting down with our customers who obviously bring what they're good at to the same table, and aligning and agreeing on a common purpose. And by starting on that platform and mutually agreeing a direction to head towards, we feel very confident, and we've already begun to prove that we can co-create smarter and more sustainable supply chains that are better equipped for the future. And better equipped for the future, not just from an economic point of view, but also recognizing that there are environmental and social benefits to be had as well. So the program comprises those three essential pain points that our customers told us. The first one, they told us 87% rather of our customers have some type of waste reduction, elimination, avoidance goal. So it seems only natural that we would want to jump onto that opportunity. For all the obvious reasons, we're creating a lot of single-use packaging systems. We're creating a lot of materials that are used once and thrown away. And in fact, around the plastics commodity in particular, half of the plastic that's been produced in the last 100 years has been produced in the last 20 years. And while a lot of the focus and scrutiny sits on plastic today, paper is not so far behind. And there's a tremendous opportunity for us to work in collaboration to draw more and more of that material, we think, out of the supply chain and replace it with reusable, shareable systems. Because we know through these 40 years in the US and 30 years in Canada, that sharing and reusing does draw down the amount or the demand for raw material, for energy and water. And I think that's best illustrated with this diagram that kind of elaborates a little bit on my introduction to CHEP, who we are and what we do. But when you see, if you follow the circle around and starting at about that 9 o'clock position, we have some 500 service centers across North America. We're in close proximity to our manufacturing customers, so we're able to deliver our assets quite effectively. Our customers then put their product either in or on ours and ship it through supply chain. The assets then come back to us, we repurpose them, we inspect them, we wash them if necessary and paint them, what have you, get them into a service condition ready to go back out again, and then that process repeats. And through life cycle development tools that we've developed over the last number of years, we're able to now quantify just what those benefits mean from an environmental point of view. that pooling an asset minimizes the demand for natural resources. We do purchase and run a pool based on a high quality asset. That asset is leveraged over many supply chains, many trips and many years. So the effective utilization of the lumber per trip is very low. And then, as I mentioned, we have 110 million pallets today located within close proximity to our customers. So the transportation portion, either to get it to a customer or to bring it back into our network, is low, which implies then lower levels of CO2 or other emissions or fuel consumption. And then finally, I think I already mentioned this on one of my introductory slides, the raw material that we've manufactured all of these assets from comes now from 100% certifiable supply chains and sources. So that's the first focus area, about how can we build on this historical waste reduction platform that we had, how can we do more of that into the future? Secondly, if you remember, I said that many of our customers have told us they wanted to reduce their energy footprint. Now, from our point of view, since we are very much a transport-dependent industry, a transport-dependent service provider, the most obvious area for us to help our customers is in transportation. And in particular, our focus in this area is around the identification and eradication of empty transport miles. We know in the US today, about almost 1/3 of trailers at any point in time driving on the roads are empty. That adds up to more than 50 billion miles, and at the current cost of transportation, over $100 billion transportation cost just associated with moving assets from the point of last delivery to the point of next pickup, which not only implies unnecessary cost in the system, but in today's world, increased fuel spend, increased emissions, and increased CO2. So using our supply chain visibility, and again, the fact that we're connecting so many points across the supply chain as a starting point, we're now openly collaborating with customers across different networks, working with manufacturers and retailers alike to identify and eliminate these empty lanes. And in doing so, putting the transportation equipment to much better use, continual use, and ultimately creating more circular supply chains out of the equipment itself. And then thirdly, our focus areas on, a bit more broadly speaking, but generally cutting out inefficiencies. A couple of areas in particular that we're working on at the moment are working to try and help customers better optimize and fulfill orders. Also, several automation initiatives connected to the bulk receipt of raw materials, or even in some cases, bulk delivery of products and services to customers at retail. And then a longer term opportunity around possible digitalization of the supply chain and the benefits that come with not just, in our case, tracking the movement of balances of assets across supply chains, but potentially tracking individual movements, and at the same time tracking movement, also perhaps collecting information around temperature, humidity, shock, vibration, which would be particularly interesting in terms of the data that could untap for sensitive supply chains. So those are the three focus areas for Zero Waste World. Again, it's about eliminating waste, eradicating empty transport miles, and cutting out other inefficiencies in the supply chain. And I think if we continue to look at projects and opportunities in that through that Zero Waste World lens, of course we need to deliver economic value. That's a given. I think that's the cost of entry still today. But beyond that, if we're smart and we scrutinize these opportunities appropriately and we collaborate and work with the right partners, we can also untap environmental and social benefits at the same time, creating a much more of a true sort of triple bottom line approach. So in summary, we want to work together with partners and customers. We want to collaborate using fewer resources, creating more value, and in the spirit of collaboration to do that together with our customers. So with that, I would like to hand over to Crystal and rejoin you here in a few minutes. Thanks for your time so far.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Crystal Howe, Sustainability Manager for Ice River Springs. Ice River Springs, 10 years ago, I would have called a water bottling company, but it has really transitioned over the last 10 years to be more of a recycling company, a sustainability company. And I'll show you this in the next slide, please, Jonathan. So we started off as entrepreneurs. My parents started Ice River in 1995, and it has continued to be a Canadian family-run business since then. So the newest piece of Ice River is our new green bottle. I hope some of you have seen it in the stores. It's pretty eye-catching. Often when I spoke about that bottle, people didn't know the name Ice River very well, but if I said, you know, that green bottle, they'd go, oh yeah, I've definitely seen that green bottle. So marketing has transitioned to Green Bottle Co. We started BMP Recycling a few years ago, 10 years ago now, and I'll discuss that one a little bit more. From there, we have transitioned into plastic furniture, so high-end outdoor furniture, a farm that runs completely organically, probably the most sustainable cyclical type of business you could be in. Greenlid is a piece of our company as well now that we have invested in, so it's a compostable products line. And BMP Extrusion is the newest addition, so we've begun manufacturing our own case wrap so that we can start to put recycled content in that as well. I feel that my family has always had multiple companies going on at the same time, even though we did take a time to really focus on water for a while. Slowly, we've transitioned into this Ice River Sustainable Solutions family of companies. You can go to the next slide, Jonathan. A lot of people want to know how we got to where we are right now. And part of that began around 2007 when we started to really think about the plastics footprint that our company had as a water bottler. So we started to look at the volume that we used. And of course, most manufacturers started with lightweighting to really reduce the amount of plastic we were consuming. And from there, we started to look at other options. So things like Tetra Pak, we tried PLA. Both of those options had negative attributes. We found Tetra or carton very difficult to find recyclers for, and PLA just simply didn't have the shelf life and really altered the flavor of our beautiful spring water. So we started to look at rPET, and that was around, so that's recycled PET, that was probably around 2008, 2009. But every batch that we purchased was a little bit different because we weren't getting it from the same supplier. There just wasn't enough out there. So Jamie, my dad, decided that we should start our own recycling plant down the road from our water plant. And that was just something that all of us thought, oh gosh, here we go. We're going to see how this goes. And it has gone tremendously well. So BMP began in 2010, and that facility we basically received our letter of non-objection from CFIA in 2010 for our 100% recycled bottle. We were told that would never happen, that it just wasn't possible, but we found a way to do it. So in this image, you can see we take approximately 80% of all the PET collected in the Blue Box curbside system in Ontario. We purchase bales out of the MRFs, the local MRFs. We grind that material up, and within that we get PET flake as well as HD and polypropylene flake or polyolefins. We were watching Dragon's Den and we came across a company called CRP Plastic Products. And we thought, what a great place for this cap material to be used. So we met with them and invested in them, asked them to start using our cap material. And now we have a line of completely 100% cap material through the Blue Box program being made into chairs. Now we own 100% of that company as of 2018. And then finally, we ended up with our green bottle. So although that clear flake was very sought after, the green product, the green material just didn't have a home. And so my last name, my maiden name is Gott. Everybody called this pile of green plastic in our plant Mount Gott, because Jamie was hell-bent he was going to find a use for that material. So we decided to make our own brand green, and that keeps an additional 5 million pounds of plastic out of landfill every year. So as this sustainability ball starts rolling, you really can't stop it, and you definitely don't want to get in the way. So we just kind of started going with the flow. So we did the green bottle. After that, we decided that our own circular economy was really growing, and we knew how critical it was for businesses to be able to rely on steady flow. So we thought, why don't we look at our own facilities and determine how we can go zero waste to landfill so that we can support other circular economies that we're not a part of, such as paper. So all of our bottling plants started the zero waste to landfill trip in 2015, and by 2017, everybody had achieved it. From there, we went to clean sweep certification to make sure that we were keeping all of our fibers, our flake, resin, and all plastic materials out of the environment. So all of our water bottling plants are clean sweep certified. And I would recommend everybody have a look at that legislation. It's a really great program. We then opened BMP extrusion in 2018, which allowed us to have a little bit more control over that film piece that goes over top of our package. And within that, at this point, we're up to 20% post-industrial recycled content, with the want to definitely improve that, get much higher rates, and move to post-consumer. Now, just a few weeks ago, we announced our purchase of Urban Polymers in Toronto. So again, expanding our access to rPET and HDPE, and that allows us to move into other packaging options, and hopefully supply the market, definitely supply the market with really good food grade certified rPET. We can go to the next slide, Jonathan. So here you'll see the sustainability piece of the rPET transition. When I first came back to Ice River, I actually took a few years off to become a nurse and have my children. And when my dad asked me to come back for this role, he said, we just really need you to start to advocate for circular economy and plastics and recycled PET. And I said, I'll do that, but I need to understand that this is actually the best thing that we could possibly be doing. So we brought in a third party called Green Story. They went through every single thing we do, from collection at the curbside, so municipal collection, all the way to delivery of our product into our consumers. And these are the savings that we have seen. So since we started recycling PET, we have overall had a 78% emission savings, but we have saved enough energy to power over 1,000 supermarkets for a year. We've avoided the emissions equivalent of almost 4,200,000 trees. We've saved enough water for 1.6 million daily household consumption of water, and we've diverted over 20,000 loads of waste from landfill. So these amazing consequences of making it a good choice for the environment, they really add up over time. You can go to the next slide, Jonathan. So we've received a few awards as we've gone through. Walmart has been a great friend of ours, as well as Loblaws and many other retailers. The DuPont Innovation in Packaging Award for responsible packaging. And then most recently, the Zenith Global Bottled Water Award for Best Packaging Solution. So I got to go to Spain for that one. That was really exciting. As for our future of sustainability at Ice River, my job is always changing and growing, and that's the really exciting thing about being a sustainability person, is that it's never going to stop. It's going to keep that ball just keeps rolling. So we look at things like efficiencies. From an efficiency standpoint, we think about energy consumption, water consumption, and so on. Transportation is another key place, so CHEP has really worked with us on that. We talk about education. So consumers are being bombarded with lots of information about how bad plastic is, but there are some really great stories, and there's some really great uses for plastic, and they do play a key part of our lives. So we really advocate for education around plastic products, and then further growth. So growing with the market, helping to build that circular economy infrastructure in Ontario, in Canada, and North America overall. Next slide, Jonathan. So I'll hand this off to Jonathan.
Thanks so much, Crystal. Hopefully you can see me all again now, and hear me, more importantly. So that was really, really interesting. What I'd like to now do is sort of take it away. We'll come back together again now and share some of our collective learnings through this partnership. The first thing is to share that we have so much in common, but we're trying to achieve different things. Obviously, Ice River Springs is in the bottled water business, and we're a humble pallet company. But our businesses share very, very similar principles, both obviously being circular. One benefit of that, I think we've proven over the last 6 months, is that by being circular, by having better control over the materials you need when you need them, gives you some resiliency when, as I mentioned at the beginning, when those supply chains become a little bit stretched. One other thing we have in common is that we both have common purpose. Again, in our respective areas, we strive to create more value, consuming the least amount of resources possible, whether that's raw material or energy. Those inputs required to drive our business, we constantly strive to consume the least amount, and what we do consume to procure in the most environmentally and socially responsible ways. So when we realized we had those areas of commonality, we wanted to start to look at things through this new zero waste world lens and answer the question of, what else can we do? It's been great so far, but what more can we do to build on that? And I think one of the starting points was to really understand in more detail, beyond the transactional history that we've had, where when Ice River Springs needs pallets, we're there to deliver them. But beyond that, where are the synergies within our business? And the starting point was to map out our respective supply chains. And not only did we realize very quickly that they're both circular, but there are certain points of interaction where they come together. And then secondly, some just additional sort of aha moments. As Crystal mentioned, the labels and the bottle caps that are the waste that isn't part of the future bottle, the RPET bottle, that waste comes out and is recycled into outdoor furniture. Well, guess what? We take some of the waste wood from our supply chain and put that into furniture in the future. We also both strive for zero waste to landfill. So we realized we were continually looking for ways to turn whatever residual waste that comes out of our systems into a valuable and much needed resource in the future. And that's certainly an area we will touch on at the end here, where we think there's potential future collaboration. Crystal, over to you.
All right. So we talk about having resiliency in circular models. I think COVID has definitely helped show that through COVID, we remained to have access. We always had access to our raw materials. So we pull from the blue box, whereas others were having a difficult time finding access to that material. Beyond COVID, we've found that with this efficacy of 100% recycled content RPET, what we found is that we could actually remove the peaks and valleys from a financial perspective on our raw materials coming in. So we weren't tied to oil prices as much. We were able to just basically handle some peaks and valleys, but generally level everything out. And then with PET sanitizer bottles, that was the one thing that I wanted to mention about COVID, was that we were being asked to supply our water bottles for these sanitizer bottles because we were unable to find any within Canada or outside of that to bring them in. So it was really neat to see how important it is to find local access, or as local as possible, to your raw materials, and ensure that your supply chain is resilient for times like this. And it's hard to prepare for it. But what we found was, by being sustainably based, that it just automatically prepared us for some of the troubles that people experienced during that time. Did you want to talk about the next one?
Yes, thanks. We also, I mentioned earlier on that we have developed an environmental life cycle assessment tool. And beyond the 100% certified raw materials that go into our pallets, we're able now to quantify the incremental environmental benefits that our customers realize. So when we went back and ran the Ice River Springs total pallet usage to date through that calculator, we realized that what they had effectively done was drawn down their CO2 emissions by over 1.5 million pounds. And at the same time, effectively diverted what would have been 2 million pounds of wood going into landfill almost certainly. We were able to avoid that through that share and reuse model. And I think when we realized all of these benefits, we felt there was a good story to tell. And I think one thing that certainly CHEP has evolved over the last few years is we've moved from being fairly, I wouldn't say opaque, but we've become far more transparent in telling these types of good stories, from the invisible backbone of the supply chain to now talking openly about the benefits and the gains that our customers have realized. So we sat down with Ice River Springs and we created this case study to share these types of benefits in a way to try and inspire others to also seek these types of collaborations, not necessarily with CHEP, of course, but with other supply chain partners, to open up and quantify these benefits beyond the traditional economics, as I mentioned, and now start to share these good examples. So this is widely available and can be downloaded, I think, from each of our websites at the moment.
Okay, so waste. We're talking about further reduction of waste. And I would start off by saying it's so important that we don't simply look at our scrap and the materials coming out of our facilities as waste. We need to start looking at what is actually truly waste. For us at Ice River, things like adhesives are probably one of the most difficult things to find a home for, but other items, things that we would traditionally think would go to the landfill, they can have value for other members of your very own supply chain. So opening that up and looking at where your requirements cross each other and where they touch each other is really important. For us, transitioning from single-use to reusable systems, especially when it comes to bulk materials. So working with CHEP on some of their bulk options is something that we're looking at in the future. Waste to resources and closing the loop across multiple supply chains. We've looked at areas where we might have a waste product, such as stretch film around our pallet, and how that material might actually be something that's valuable to CHEP in the manufacture of a new pallet that they're coming up with. So we've really looked across, many of our suppliers, from paper, from cardboard, and so on, to look at what can we give you so that it's valuable again, and what could you give us that we can turn into something more valuable? So along with CHEP, there's many other options, and I would say really opening up that supply chain is critical.
Yeah, just one point to add on to that, Crystal, is as I mentioned at the beginning, some 87% of our customers have a waste reduction or a goal connected to incorporating recycled material into their products. So there's definite opportunity to collaborate across supply chains where one person's waste could potentially become one other partner's valuable resource. And as you mentioned, we at CHEP are certainly getting more and more into plastic products. We will have a long-term goal as of next week to use 100% recycled material. So stretch wrap and polyethylene, the commodity types of materials that traditionally, maybe perhaps historically, have not been so interesting for companies like ourselves, become very important and a critical potential raw material in the future. So we're always keen to identify where those sources of material are. And then the second area I think that we see tremendous opportunity for the future between our companies is around the energy footprint, particularly obviously around transportation, and how we can partner with Ice River to identify where there might be opportunities to optimize transportation, where we might procure from Ice River or other customers, but in doing so, identifying where there are empty lanes. If we're delivering product from A to B and then we happen to know somebody else that's also running back in that reverse direction, how can we merge those two lanes together, fill them in both directions, fill that truck in both directions, and take that empty trailer off the road? So this is definitely an area that we're going to look into in much more detail in the future.
I would also add that at Ice River, one of the key performance indicators that our transportation department has is reducing backhaul, like empty backhaul, so minimizing those empty miles. So again, that's one of those places where we overlap, and CHEP is able to assist us. So we'll move on to that shared purpose and goals. So this is where you sit down, and I find with sustainability people, we like to share lots of information. So we sit down and we talk about, okay, here's my goal. So Jonathan, what's your goal? And how can what I do every day help you do what you need to accomplish. And then you find those common ground areas, and then you develop a how together, which has been a really interesting thing to do with CHEP up to this point.
Yeah, and then I jokingly say that sustainability people, professionals, are natural collaborators. My joke of the day is that if you put 4 CEOs in a room, they'll each find a corner. If you put 4 sustainability, so with all due respect to any CFOs that are on the call here, but if you put 4 sustainability professionals in the same room, they'll generally convene in the middle and start to share and collaborate. And I think the reason for that is that sustainability tends to span across different parts of the organizations in which they sit. They are the glue that hold different targets together. They naturally have to collaborate with transportation people. They have to collaborate with procurement. They have to collaborate with plant operations or site operations. So it's a natural opportunity that we like to talk to one another, and on that foundation that Crystal mentioned, when we can align on a purpose, we're quite effective together.
Right, and then the last piece of that is that triple bottom line focus. And triple bottom line is, I call it the 3 Ps: people, planet, profit. Lots of companies call it many different things, but what I find is when we decide to make a difference, a change based on an environmental issue that we want to tackle, there's unintended benefits that come along with that. So an example would be that when we first started making our preform, we tried to make it as clear and colorless as possible. But in order to recover more plastic out of those PET bales we were purchasing, we decided to let the blues and the purples and the yellows start going through and making it a blue bottle. Now, at the end of the day, what we find is our blow molders, so the heat tunnel of our blow molding system, the ovens, actually require 50% less energy to heat that preform because the color naturally attracts the heat. So again, you end up with a financial savings when you do something for the right reasons. And at the same time, there's tons of those examples that I could talk about within our program as we've been, again, letting that ball roll for sustainability. There always tends to be something that will also help you from a people or financial perspective.
So to sort of wrap it up and then start to think about some questions and then maybe how you might look for collaborative partners. This is the old African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. So in the spirit of collaboration, I think what we would like to close on is a few sort of provocative questions in terms of how collaboration might find its way into your organization, if it's not there already. Starting by asking yourself, what are your, sorry, Crystal, you were going to go first. I just realized now.
No, that's okay. You go ahead.
So what are your goals? What is it that your organization is set out to do? What are the sort of those primary areas of focus for the next few years?
And then you look at those low-hanging fruit. We always talk about, where do you want to get something started? For us, we really wanted to get a culture shift happening so that even though what we did is sustainable, we really wanted our people to follow suit and really trust that our decision making was based on really sound environmental protection beliefs. So we started looking at easy things, light changes to go to LED lighting for energy savings, waste avoidance. So all of our offices went zero waste to landfill. And so if you come to our buildings, you have about 6 bins that you have to sort your lunch materials into. We also worked on paper reduction in our offices, water savings, fuel savings, those low-hanging fruit that always have a positive environmental impact.
And then reach out into your top 3, top 5, doesn't really matter, but reach into your primary supply chain partners and ask similar questions of them. What are their goals? And when you align theirs with yours, where is the alignment? Where do you find similar aspirations? Not necessarily in the target, not how you're going to achieve it, but is it a topic that you share? Do you have a similar aspiration to improve in that area? Because that then is the starting point to ask the next question. What can you do together?
And then acknowledging that we're not all experts at everything. So who in your supply chain would actually be able to help you where you need help? One thing that we've done is we've opened up our doors to other manufacturers of packaging so that they can come and see how their packaging interacts with the recycling process. An example would be we had a coffee company come in with their iced coffee cup that was initially polystyrene, and they were able to see how that polystyrene has a negative impact on what we were doing. So they were able to change that. They asked us, what could we make it so that it actually separates out easier? And we gave them two options. One was polypropylene, one was PET. Those are very good materials that we are able to manage within our stream if they do get mixed into our bale. So that ability to be transparent, which is kind of the last point there, sharing information, nothing behind closed curtains, and really having an honest and truthful conversation.
So I'd certainly like to start by thanking everybody for their time this afternoon. And I think what we were now going to do, I think we have another 10 minutes or so, was to answer any questions, Wendy, that came through.
Thank you very much, both Jonathan and Crystal. That was a very informative presentation, and just wanted to thank you for sharing your individual initiatives and how well you've collaborated together to benefit both your businesses and other stakeholders. So thank you for that. We do have a few questions. Let me just start with first one. As a Canadian manufacturer, can I get involved in sending stretch wrap waste to CHEP for use in making composite blocks?
Did I really say that? I think much as I would like to say yes now, not quite. But we are, Crystal mentioned we're developing this composite block, which is a blend of recycled plastic and recycled wood. And we've developed it in a way that it appears at the moment to be quite forgiving of the material that's going into it. So we feel that there's definitely a long-term opportunity to get a lot of undesirable material incorporated into that. However, we're not quite ready to take that material in yet because we are still going through a proof of concept. That's the good news. We will be ready. The bad news is at the moment we're doing a lot of this work in Florida, which unfortunately is not so close to Canada. And I think what that does actually is it highlights the importance of finding local solutions for waste, because transportation can be a deal breaker. You know, the need to consolidate and aggregate waste material together and get it in close proximity to where it's needed and can be turned into a resource, that's a very critical element that needs to be considered. But long story short, yes, I hope soon Canadian customers can come to us with not just waste film, but other waste materials from their businesses that might lend themselves to our future products, but also that we might be able to facilitate getting that material in the hands of others that need it, others that have those common goals.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next question. Is there a preference to using post-industrial to post-consumer recycling?
I'll take that one. I think post-industrial has to have a place for sure. It's very, very important. So I think when you're opening up your supply chains and having these discussions, this is when post-industrial starts to be consumed more efficiently. Post-consumer is definitely something that is being driven right now through the Blue Box program and through the government, federal and provincial, because it's always just more difficult to use. But I think we always, as manufacturers, have to stick together and make sure that we're consuming our post-industrial, especially when speaking to government, making sure that although post-consumer we understand is a critical point, post-industrial is just as important when it comes to these things, and we need to use it as well. All plastic waste is waste. We might as well just consume what we have here.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Next, is there a cost to getting involved in the Zero Waste World program?
No, it's free. No, seriously, no, there is not. No, for the moment, it's obviously an area that we're focusing on with our existing customers. And I would encourage any customer that's on the call today who is working with CHEP that would like to learn more, please reach out and give me a call. Email information's on on the screen now, where you can go to CHEP's website and find out more information. We would certainly love to have a conversation. And you know, that's very interesting and often opens up opportunities in any of those areas, whether it's transport related, waste related, or just other supply chain inefficiencies. But no, it's free and available for all customers.
Okay, that's great and good news. Thank you. We have just 2 more questions and we have 5 minutes left. So if anyone else would like to submit, please use the Q&A tool to send your question in. Okay, what other solutions does CHEP offer to create the positive environmental benefits?
Okay, so the big areas obviously within Zero Waste World are around transportation and waste, because that's where the bulk of our customers have goals. But we have a whole suite of other solutions. I'm actually going to refer to some notes because there are so many. But I touched on the automation opportunities around moving from single-use packaging systems to bulk systems. We're able to assess international flows. We're able to help customers with reverse logistics problems. We're working with one customer in the US at the moment who has a tremendous waste challenge at retail. So we're helping to orchestrate a reverse logistics flow where we can consolidate that material from about 9,000 locations back to 30 to gather it in meaningful quantities and volumes where it can then be turned into a valuable resource. We have customers involved in what we call managed collection programs, where our pallets come directly back from a retailer back to a manufacturing customer, and we do that in order to further reduce transportation expense and cut down emissions. A whole host of other programs that more than happy to share with any customer.
Okay, sorry. Technology, I was microphone challenged for a second. Sorry about that. We do have one last question and we do have time, so I'll go ahead and pose it and you can decide who needs to answer it. I guess this is actually more for Crystal. Does Ice River Springs offer any guidance or insight into how to design products for recycling? And then what happens after they are placed in the blue box?
Absolutely. We started doing that. We met with several organizations over the past couple of years to really get everybody thinking about how to incorporate recycled content. But at the same time, when you start talking about recycled content, you realize that you have to select resins and materials and products that are easy to basically loop. So we're very happy to help with those types of things. We work with another organization that designs extrusion equipment, so we can work through the entire value chain, I guess, to determine the best way to design a product. One key lesson that I've learned is function over aesthetic. So the function, like, what do you need that packaging to do to solve the issue? What do you need it to do? Don't worry about how it looks right off the bat. Marketing can manage those types of things, but we really, everybody really has to start thinking about, why are we purchasing something? The water bottle is a perfect example. Our water bottle is very thin. There's not a lot of plastic in it. It's green, it's different than everybody else's, or it's blue. Yet it does what it's supposed to do. It gets clean, healthy, safe water to anybody who needs it. And that's how we like to design packaging, is we simplify everything. Simplify it as much as possible and start from there. But we're definitely happy to help.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. Great answer. And nice to know the collaboration extends to your fellow manufacturers as well. So thank you. That's all the questions that we have. So I would just like, on behalf of FHCP and our members, to say thank you again for sharing your expertise with us today and your knowledge. And for those on the phone, thank you again for sharing your time with us today and hearing these insights. And as you can see on the screen, both Crystal and Jonathan have provided their contact details if you would like to reach out directly to either of them. So we are just 2 minutes ahead of time. So thank you again for joining us today. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Wendy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.